Hey, Guy Powell here, and welcome to the next episode of the backstory on the Shroud of Turin. And if you haven't already done so, please visit guypowell.com, where you'll find more information on these episodes and podcasts and be able to sign up for them. Today I have with me Teemu Hartikainen, and he is from Finland, so it's early my time, late his time. And he and I met for the first time out at the Shroud conference that just took place in St. Louis. And we're going to talk about one of the talks that he gave, and plus a couple of other things. And so Teemu is a longtime researcher and certainly an advocate for the Shroud. And Teemu, welcome. Great to have you. Tell us a little bit about your backstory on how you got involved in the Shroud of Turin.
Thank you, Guy, for this invitation. It's great to be here, and we discussed this possibility already before I came to St. Louis. So we actually had in mind that we could do this podcast over there, but it's much easier now because it was pretty hectic days and very interesting all the presentations, because we had so many of them that I'm really looking forward to receiving all those presentations online after a couple of weeks, I understood. So my backstory on the Shroud. So I'm a founder and a president of the Society for Sindonology in Finland, and we have had this society for 2 years now. And the idea is that we gather together the people in this very small country. I mean, you're in Atlanta. I was just looking at, you have more people in metropolitan Atlanta than we have in Finland. So you might imagine that there is only a handful of people over here who are really very keen advocates of the Shroud. Of course, people might be interested and might know something about it, but in our society we have a few people who are doing presentations all over, and we have also had manufactured some of the artifacts that we need in these presentations. So that's the idea of having them, not using as cult items, but the idea is to, like I bought this 3D model from St. Louis, a very very nice piece and very good artifact to use in presentation to show how the burial took place. And what was the posture of the body and all that. So our idea is to gather all these items together. They are now scattered all over the churches. So we are buying them for the society, and then we are planning to put up an exhibition room for all of this. And but if we want to go even bit farther away, so there's one book in Finnish language which I showed you also at the St. Louis conference. So, Photograph of Jesus by Dr. Juha Hiltunen, an excellent book, which I actually just discussed with him that we would like to do an English version of that and update it at the same time, because there is actually a translation of the Bishop Darkey's memorandum in this book as well. So in that sense, it's pretty interesting stuff. And we go even further back. I was thinking that I might have encountered the Shroud in early 2000s at some time. So I grew up as a Lutheran in Finland, like almost everybody here, and that is very how would I say, theoretical form of Christianity. So there is not much respect for relics or anything concrete, but as a researcher, I'm more of an Aristotelian type, and I like to do work with my hands, and I like concrete things on opposition of being a Platonistic and thinking of only in ideas. So in that sense, when I first heard of the Shroud in early 2000s. I read some articles and I'm like, okay, that's very interesting. I kind of keep the memory trace there, but I didn't study much more of it until in 2013, I think it was, when I was doing a postdoc in Sacramento, and I found a book by Mark Antonacci, and I was really fascinated of that book. And then I started to study more of this topic, and eventually I called Barry's work, and I read all sorts of books about this. And then the Finnish book came out, and I contacted Dr. Hiltunen, and we became friends. And now we are working together in this society. So maybe that answers your question about the background.
Yeah. Well, did you get to meet Mark Antonacci at the conference? Because he was there and he
Yes,
spoke once
I
or
did.
twice.
I did, and I talked to him, and we. I haven't yet contacted him again, but I have a few ideas for how to prove his theory about this particle radiation.
Mm.
And the thing is that because I explained to him that we can't examine the shroud, but we could be more. There could be more possibilities to study the Sudarium of Oviedo or the tomb itself, because like Antonacci tells in his book, uh, the same particle radiation should be visible in these uh, artifacts and places as well. So because he has this idea of radioactive calcium, and what was the other subject that he had there? So anyway, the idea is that it's not naturally occurring um, isotope
Mm.
of those materials. So if they are there on the shroud or the Oviedo Sudarium or at the tomb or any other artifacts that could have been there in the tomb, so then that proves the theory, and we can move forward with the idea.
Yeah,
So that's
that's
I was discussing with him,
yeah,
and
that
it's
would be
really
very
fascinating.
interesting. Certainly, well, it's always hard to get access to any of these relics, although the Sudarium is probably the relatively the easiest one.
Right,
The Caesar Barta and some of the other Spanish scientists that are and researchers that have access to it seem to have a relatively open access as opposed to the shroud being very carefully
right, right.
protected and curated. And then plus, to your point, if you could get to the tomb, I don't know. I've never been to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre or to the edicule where the tomb is actually there. But it would
Mm,
be interesting if you could capture some dust or something like that that is
right,
around that area and somehow use that. So. And then I guess the stone would be made of calcium. So if you're looking for one of the isotopes of calcium, that might be an interesting way to to actually do the research on it. So now
definitely.
so what else did you find interesting at the conference? What did you learn that was new?
Oh, many things, and I'm sure I will be learning much more when I start looking at those videos, because I only spent there for a day and a half. I had two of my sons with me, and we were doing a touring trip of the Midwest. So I didn't come only for the conference, but it was great that I was able to come for that time and have my own presentation there and listen to several very interesting ones. The one I remember, which is connected to what we just spoke about, was Pam Moon's presentation about the that there was possibly a rope around Jesus's hands, because the hand posture doesn't hold up by itself without having some kind of a rope, and she was claiming that this rope actually exists in a cathedral in Brooks in Belgium. And I
Hmm.
was starting to look at my old photographs when I lived for 3 months in Belgium, and I have been to that place. So, so that would be also one option if it is so that there was a rope around his hands, So that rope was there inside the shroud, and then the same radioactivity was touching that piece, where we would then find those special isotopes of calcium and other materials that Antonacci is speaking about in that rope. So that's also one path to look at, to study that.
Yeah. Well, and so because I've been to Bruges as well, although I maybe have seen that piece because it's protected in a glass tube, and
Okay.
and what it is, as I recall, is that the two thumbs that this piece was used to hold the thumbs together of the
Okay.
hands, so that they wouldn't flop to the sides while he was
Right.
being carried or while he was in the tomb. They would be
Right.
over his body,
Yes.
and then there's supposedly blood on there, and so it's an interesting point if there was some kind of a radioactive event that accompanied the resurrection or was part of the resurrection, then it would be very interesting that radiation would hit not only the sudarium and the shroud and the tomb like you were talking about, but then also
Yes.
this piece. So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
fantastic. What and it's
So that was all new to me, that there was a rope involved. So you obviously knew about that, but I didn't. So
well, yeah. So I've interviewed Pam. That's how I know.
okay.
About a year ago, I think I've interviewed her, and that's how I knew. And she's such a good presenter, and she really understands everything, and has and pulls in all of the history, and she's done a lot of very good stuff. And unfortunately, I missed her presentation. I got to see her in person, but I did miss her presentation. There were just so many, and so yeah, and so for you
But
and for the
you're also able to see it when they publish it at the shroud.com. So
yeah, yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Well, and
Yeah.
the videos are going to be available shortly, but they are going to be posted as they get ready, so to speak. And so it's going to take quite a few weeks to actually post them all. So we're going to
Yes.
start posting them here pretty soon, and then go from there.
Great, great. I'm really looking forward to that and seeing all the presentations.
Yeah,
As
yeah,
as
same.
also our guys at the society, they also want to see those presentations, because they are of course very interested of this place where I have been, this special event,
Yeah.
and in a way that now our society is kind of a part of this worldwide shroudies, like you say. So.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So, now now you got to present. So tell us about what you presented, and let's talk about that a little bit.
All right. So I was presenting one of the things that we have been studying here in Finland, and that was the uh, letter from 1389. Let me go back for one point. That's so when people talk about the shroud being a fake, they always go to these two sources, which are of course the 1988 carbon dating, and the other one is an alleged letter by Bishop Darkis from Troyes in France in 1389. And because some sources claim that this letter contains a confession from an artist who made the shroud, and that has been kind of the original reason for the shroud being fake already in early 1900s, when they started to discuss about this after the photographs of Secondopia, because those photographs really needed some sort of explanation, because people had never seen anything like that before. They'd only seen the shroud, and now they were seeing the negative of that, which is then the actual photo. So so this letter is something that we have been studying, and we have found out some interesting things about that. So first of all, it's not a letter at all, because because the definition of a letter is that you have a date stamp and you have a signature and you have some text in between those. And those two parts are missing. So that cannot be called as a letter, especially when it is claimed that this letter was sent to the Pope, but there is no trace of such letter in Vatican archives or Avignon archives or any other papal archives.
So can I
So
interrupt you a second? So
yes,
at that time, there was an anti-pope in Avignon,
yeah,
and then there was the I don't know if you call him the true pope or whatever in Rome. And what you're saying is that there's archives in Avignon that has that would have potentially, if the letter was sent, it could have had a copy of the memorandum either there or then, of course, in the Vatican. Are the archives in Avignon, do they still exist in Avignon, or have they been now moved to the Vatican, or?
I don't know that, but I would expect them to be moved to Rome because
Hmm.
that kind of it was a special part of history of having this anti-pope, and I'm sure that if I would be there in the Catholic Church, I would put them together and kind of keep all the traces that there are about different popes and
Hmm.
history in one place. So I would expect them to be in Rome,
Hmm.
but of course they are in a different collection because and called Avignon collection or something. So
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, so I interrupted you, but thank you for that.
no, that's great, that's great. So so what this letter actually is only combination of two memos that that this bishop wrote, and actually the bishop didn't even wrote them himself. He had a scribe for writing them. So what he was doing is that he was probably walking around the room and speaking, and then the scribe would write down what he was saying. And they made a first very rough version, the first memo, and then they made a second memo, a little more thorough and little more like a finer version, but still very bad Latin language. So not something that you would send to the Pope as a letter. So it would still have needed a third version at least to be edited so that it would make a letter. And then of course you would need a date stamp and you would need a signature. So, but those two memos are actually archived at Troyes archives. So the city of Troyes in central France still has those memos.
So why, if these were drafts, it sounds like there was, draft one and then draft two, and then there might have been, there's no evidence of a final product written in nice, polished Latin. Why
Mhm.
would someone keep those drafts as opposed to if they're drafts and never got sent? Why wouldn't they just be thrown away?
Yes, I we have been thinking of that, and the reason is quite probably that when you were a scribe for the Catholic Church back then, or the church because it was all Catholic. So you were a scribe, you had to undergo training, and you had to follow certain standards in your work. And one of those standards is that everything that you ever write had to be archived
Hmm.
because there might be some reason to use it from some as an evidence of something. So when the bishop invites you as a scribe there to write down what he says, and you are using well whatever type of paper or pergament that they were using, uh, all of that had to be archived officially.
Hmm.
So that's the idea why the memo one and memo two are actually archived and we are able to see them now because even though the letter was never written, those memos they had to follow their own standards
Hmm.
and put them in the archives.
So on in both of those cases, you said that it's not certain whether they were written to the anti-pope or to the pope. Um, how was that the letter addressed? Wouldn't it have said, Pope Innocent the Third, blah blah blah, or whoever it was? Wouldn't it somehow say, Your Excellency, or whatever it is, Your Holiness, or does it just say, or does it not even mention that? How how would you?
Yeah,
Would that also be a reason why it would not be considered a final letter?
no, so it does talk about Holy Father and Your Highness and Your Holiness. In the actual letter text, I don't find it, but because I have it in front of me right now, but it does say that this is a letter by Pierre d'Arquis to Pope Clemens VII in Avignon. So that's
So it would have been sent
probably
then to the anti-pope in Avignon. Fantastic. Well, that's very
right,
interesting. Very,
right,
very
yeah.
interesting.
So that's how it seems to be. I didn't think of that before, but now really, yeah, it talks about Holy Father most of the time here. Most Holy Father, okay, uh, but
I don't know
and
how you
again
get
most.
more than the Holy Father. What?
I don't, I don't really know, but anyway, that's yeah. Clemens VII
Yeah.
is
Okay.
mentioned
Well,
here
that's
as well. Yeah,
fantastic. Yeah. Thank you.
yeah.
Sorry for that. So, because I found
Right.
your talk was just absolutely fascinating, and I mean, just all the different facts there. So, but I'm interrupting you, so go ahead.
All right. So the idea is that what we are now calling the letter is actually the combination of those two memos, and that combination was made in 1900 by a famous French priest and historian called Chevalier. And what he did, he combined them and he added a date stamp saying late 1389. But he didn't add a signature because that would have been too much. And actually, that date is not so far from the truth because quite probably those memos were written in July or August of 1389. Because in May 1389, those shroud exhibitions resumed in Liray. So after a couple of months, kind of drawing all the pilgrims to Liray instead of Troyes, then the bishop grew desperate of not getting anybody to pay homage to their church, and then he started writing the letter, starting with the memos. So in that sense, the date stamp, what that Chevalier added, is not very far, but of course it says late, meaning probably like December or something. But anyway, that's a forgery in a way. You're altering something that was not originally there. It has been for what 600 years untouched, and now he adds a date stamp. So that's not fair, at least.
Yeah, whoever
And
said there were no forgery or politics in related to the shroud?
oh yeah, yeah. So, but it gets worse in 1903 when an English Jesuit, Herbert Thurston, edited this text, and so he translated it to English and he edited it again a little bit, because when you're translating something, you're able to use a little different meaning words for the same thing, and you're able to kind of direct that translation to a direction where it's not actually pointing at, but where you want it to point. And when he and Chevalier also, they wanted to point the direction that the shroud is a forgery thing. So then these two, or first the combination, and then the translation to English gave it an idea of much more of what it originally said about the shroud, because originally the text is not clear whether it is referring to the shroud at Liray or the Shroud of Besançon, which was made by an artist in 1377. So there was an artistic shroud nearby, or like 150 miles away from Troyes, but still pretty nearby. But the text is not clear which one it is referring to.
Mm.
And I think this is done on purpose, like that.
So the English text or the French text or the original text or all three?
The original text, of
Okay.
course, because the way the English text was written is even more referring to what we now call Shroud of Turin, but back then it was not in Turin; it was in Ray. So that original shroud in the text, but it's not. And of course, the Shroud of Besançon hasn't existed since 1789. So after the French Revolution, when it disappeared. So nowadays nobody knows what that is. We only have a painting of that.
So there was
But any
so
right.
there was a Shroud of Besançon, um, and um, and it definitely existed. So is there other documents that point to the Besançon shroud or other history, or you
I'm
said there was a painting or a copy?
Yes. I showed at the conference that there was a painting of that
Hmm.
shroud, and I found that online. So anybody can Google that and find a painting and a little story about there being such a shroud, and then how it was disappeared in the
Mm.
French Revolution. So that much. There might be some other documents. If you go to that city of Besançon, you might find some more information about that. But anyway, it was known back then that there were artistic copies of the shroud made in different parts of Europe, actually. But these ones were the two in relatively close by in central France. So
Mm.
that's why we think that he's mixing Pierre Darquis is mixing these two shrouds in his texts on purpose.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm putting together a book, excuse me, as well on the Mandylion, and there's so many nuances. So you have then the original writer, and the original writer has their political or their scientific or whatever opinion, and so they're going to write their text or whatever, and it's going to be shaded one way or the other. And then
Mm-hmm.
you have the quality that they can write or the quality that the scribe can write. So, to your point, it's written in like draft Latin as opposed to polished Latin, and it may
Right.
or may not be, good Latin, especially if if your native language is Greek, or maybe it's Hebrew or something else, and you're trying to write in Latin, and you may not be able to actually write it very well.
Mm-hmm.
Then the document gets written, and then the translator, the one that finds it, translates it, let's say, to English or to French, and then they
Mm-hmm.
have their own political opinion. And so now
Mm-hmm.
you have like two shades of gray from what the actual truth might be. And
Right.
and it's just fascinating to see, especially when you're researching history like you've done, to kind of try and get really down to, well, what is the actual truth behind this document? Is this a political document where it's been shaded one way or the other, or is it trying to be a true, scientific kind of a document where it's trying to really just give you the facts and nothing but the facts? And
Yes.
it's very fascinating, to realize that there's that many different kind of versions and interpretations of what might actually be written about, back when that original writing was done.
Yes, and of course we are kind of speculating here because we cannot know the original intentions of the writer and original intentions of the bishop. But and then it comes to our analysis of this period that we have been looking. We are talking about very dark ages of Europe because there was a Black Death, a plague that killed half, up to half of the people, at least 1/3 of people of every city, every county, every country. So you can imagine what that does to people and the economy and agriculture and everything over there. So they are really fighting for the resources. The few people who are left, they are trying to avoid all the other people because you might get a plague. And then you're fighting for the resources and you can't find anything from the stores because they don't exist anymore. You might have your own farm and survive that way, but still it's really tough. And then, of course, in times like that, people would turn to God. And in the church times, that often meant that people had to travel to the churches. And then the bishops and priests over there were asking for donations. And my understanding is that those donations were not really voluntary like they are today. So in that sense, the churches were also struggling because they lost half of their revenue, and they were building a cathedral in Troyes, and all of a sudden nobody came to see their artifacts, and they went to a town of Liray, which was only 12 miles away. So it was very close by in the same metropolitan area. And now the Bishop of Troyes is trying to think, how do we finance all these renovations that we're doing, and what is our position here, because we have all these interesting relics, and people should come over here and pay us. And now they are going to this other place, and this is just a small glimpse of the story, what was going behind. And that kind of gives us the idea what his intentions may have been. And what we are thinking about his intentions is that he is trying, at least temporarily, to stop the exhibitions of the shroud in both places. So in Liray and in Besançon. So that's why he is writing in a sense that the Pope would after reading his letter, which he never sent, but anyway, after reading it, Pope would decide that, okay, now we need to look at this matter. Let's stop exhibiting anything and it takes half a year easily to do some examination of what is going on. And during those 6 months, people would come to Troyes. So this is our analysis of what are the intentions behind his intentionally mixing those two shrouds in his memo and criticizing so much about exhibiting something, because from our perspective it seems very strange for a bishop to say that some other church is not allowed to exhibit something. So
yeah, no, that's and that's kind of the political piece, or the that I think is just so fascinating, and understanding that history. I didn't realize that the Black Death was also playing a part in that, or the Black Plague rather, and
yeah,
and that would then decrease the money coming in, and make it difficult for both churches, both for the Liray Church and then also for the Troyes Church. Yeah, that's pretty fascinating. Now, so your research, what I understand is that these documents are in the French National Archives.
yes, that's right. So there was in 1993 there was a Sindonologist, a local Sindonologist, Hilda Leinen, who found those in those national archives, those two unfinished drafts, and they were in a foil, where the foil states that the letter that the Archis was about to write, and these two were over there, and then it's now possible to have translations of those memos as they were originally written, without using the Chevalier forgery, or at least it's not the forgery, but anyway, he combined those and added some words and omitted some other words, and then the English translations did the same. So we really need to go back to the original sources in Latin and see what was written in there.
So you're
So
saying that these two documents are in a folio in the National Archives,
mhm,
and there's a title on that folio that says the letter that Bishop Pierre Darcis was about to write. And
yeah.
what is the date of that title of the folio? Is that then does that go also back to 1389, or does that is that later, or is there a
Yeah, I tried to ask for that, but Dr. Hiltunen didn't have any of his references left for because he for the book he had piles of the references all over, and then he moved at some point, and he didn't keep any of those because he thought, I got everything in my book. But then again, when you start looking much closer what you have in your book, you would really need to go back to those sources. So I don't know that we would have to go back to his to look to find again that source which he was using for this, meaning the Hilda Leinen's research, because she as a Sindonologist must have written something about that.
yeah,
So we should go back to that and see what there is. So
yeah,
it's
very
possible,
interesting.
but it's possible, of course. So
Yeah, yeah. So the when you say they're in the National Archives, are they in Paris, or because before you said that
yes,
the
that's my
actual
understanding.
memorandum is
Yeah,
in Troyes, or where are they then now?
my understanding is that they are in Paris. Yeah,
Okay, okay.
at the Church of Troyes, probably where the ones where the letter, where a copy of that letter should also have been
Mm,
contained, but it's not there. So these memos are now in Paris.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
how I understood it. Yeah.
Wow. So fascinating. So just to kind of review, so here we have a an economic challenge for the church or the cathedral in Troyes, and then you have Lyrae, and the Troyes church is losing money because people are trying to go see what we believe is the true shroud, the authentic shroud in Lyrae, and it's
Hmm.
doing exhibitions. So the bishop there is trying to think about writing a letter to the Pope. At that time, he writes to the anti-pope, who's in Avignon, not to the other pope that's in Rome.
Hmm.
And so he does two drafts of the memorandum with his scribe actually writing it, and it wasn't finished because there's two or three things missing. One is it's not in polished Latin. The second
Hmm.
is there's no date at the top, and then it's
Hmm.
also not signed at the bottom. Now,
Right.
if the bishop was going to sign it, just curious, usually when you get a letter, let's say, at back in that time, they'd have the wax and it would be sealed with like a signet ring and stuff like that. Is that what
Yes,
you would expect as well from the bishop?
I would expect that, but of course, the signature is something that has always been. If you remember what the Apostle Paul wrote in some of his letters, he says at the, I don't remember which one it was, but at the end of the letter he says, "I'm writing you with large letters." He's signing the letter at the end, and he's writing a few words with on his own there. And I have seen this style used even today at the European Commission when the high executives are writing letters. They don't only write their signatures like we usually do. They add a few words
Hmm.
over the at the front first. So first right is it's just a couple like saying good luck to you or something like that, and then his signature below that. So there are a few words written, handwritten by the high executive of the commission, and
Hmm.
then the letter. So that's where I once saw this. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. That reminds me of what Paul did.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. So now, what I don't understand though, too, now, okay, so the letter never got sent, but the Pope, how did the Pope know that there was this conflict going on? And then where he then basically said, stop exhibiting on both sides. Because then didn't he also say to Liray, the church in Liray, they had to say it's not the authentic shroud, but that there's something else that the Pope had written that so that Liray couldn't say that this is the authentic shroud. There was some limitation. How did the Pope find out about that? Or do you have a feeling for that?
Well, yes, that gets to the very bottom of the thing, because back then the owner of the church in Luray was Geoffrey de Charny, a very famous person in France at that time, a friend to the Pope and also related to the Pope and related to the earlier Bishop of Troyes. So they had all these family relations, and these they they did know, the Pope did know about the shroud, because the shroud was taken from Constantinople in 1204, and it was kept in secret for a long time. But the information passed that this was taken from there, and it's kind of well, it's not a thing that they would brag about. That the Pope would say that, hey, it's great that we have this artifact here. That we You remember when we sacked the great city of Constantinople, that the Emperor Constantine founded as a capital of Roman Empire, and for 1,000 years that place was also a center of Christianity and had all the possible relics. And they knew this. And now the Pope, would he go and say that it's great that we sacked the city and we took the artifacts from there? So for them, it's much safer, and also better to say that this might be different than the Mandulion that they had back in Constantinople, which is now disappeared. But we have this which we could consider kind of a similar item.
Yeah, yeah,
But there has to be an explanation to these things, and quite often interactions between people go like this. So
yeah. So those interactions then with the Pope, up until, of course, his order, I guess, to stop this claiming that the Lee Ray shroud was the true shroud, um, would have been kind of like through informal, kind of, verbal as opposed to written methods.
yes, definitely like that. And also what I didn't mention is that Geoffrey de Charny actually had a permission from the Pope to
Mm.
start showing the shroud in Liray. Whereas even this the Archie's letter that I have here, it says that the Pope has told him to shut up. So 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 they have had this verbal interaction even before this alleged letter was written.
Well, so when the Pope told Darcys to shut up, so to speak,
Yeah,
was that written or was that verbal?
I don't know. It could be either one. Right. It is actually, yeah. He was the bishop was saying that there was a letter from Pope to Geoffrey de Charny that they have been granted a permission to show the shroud, uh, and the bishop here says that I have only heard, because I haven't been able to find a copy of this letter. So I've only heard that for me, uh, they have ordered silence.
Ah,
So these are the words I'm translating from Finnish here. So, but
yeah,
quite close to what was written in the original Tarkis letter.
yeah. Oh, very
So
interesting.
so yeah, that's the background for it. So
Well, that is an awesome story, and I really appreciate it. And it was very fascinating, because this time period when the when the radiocarbon dating was done, the
mm,
radiocarbon daters and the shroud, the non-authenticists, or they're called the medievalists, they always refer to this shroud and this letter as
right,
being the proof that the shroud that was displayed in Liray was a copy, and the letter then proves that. And so they always point to that. And then, of course, the radiocarbon dating came out to basically say 1260 to 1390, which overlaps with
Yeah,
this
yeah,
time
yeah, yeah.
period. So then they're basically pulling these two things, which turn out to now be clearly false. I mean, based on your research, number one, the letter was never sent, and then
Mm.
number two, the radiocarbon dating has been basically debunked. And so, and yet these medievalists will not let go of these two, what they're calling facts, as their proof of the medieval dating of the or origin of the shroud.
And the craziest thing of all that is that this bishop letter says that this artist is among us and he has confessed of doing this. And if we start looking at what the STURP team did in 1978, the only thorough scientific examination for the shroud has ever been done, and their conclusion is that this is not work of an artist. They said, we don't know what this is. This is very strange. The information that we're getting from this shroud is unimaginable, but definitely it is not made by an artist.
Mm,
This is the scientific proof of that. So we're
yeah.
not saying anything else, but what we are saying is that it's definitely not an artistic piece.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, this has been incredibly fascinating, and we're about out of time, and hopefully the audience sees it as well as being incredibly valuable. For me, this was just I sat through your presentation at in St. Louis, and I thought it was just awesome, and just all of these different pieces related to the shroud and the letter or the non-letter or whatever you want to call that writing that is now in the archives, but doesn't have. I love the proof. It doesn't have the date, and it isn't in Finnish, Latin, and then it isn't signed. Is just incredible, incredibly interesting.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to add before we close?
No, thanks, Guy. It's been a pleasure for me also to talk with you and get more deeper into this because, of course, when I was doing the presentation, I was I was reading from my PowerPoint slides and thinking, what is connected. But now that you're making all these questions at the right time, it's easier for me also to get deeper into the topic. So thank you for
Yeah,
this.
absolutely. Well, I just found it so fascinating. I'm so glad we were able to have you and that it worked out with your trip and that you were able to spend some time with us and then we were able to get you a speaking slot. I know it was touch and go there at the last, but it was just great. And so thank you then today for spending some time with us and otherwise then let me just close. We've been speaking with Teemu Hartikainen. He is the president. Did you say also the founder of the Finnish Sindonology Society? And so,
Yes.
really wonderful to have you. And for the audience, definitely stay tuned for many others in this series of the backstory on the Shroud of Turin. Teemu, thank you so much.
Thank you, Guy.